back to the NCMU podcast, where we are dedicated to raising up and equipping the next generation of nerd culture ministers and missionaries. My name is Mark, and I'm one of the hosts here at the NCMU podcast, and I am joined today by a brand new couple who's going to be joining the show for the first time, talking through some of what God has been doing in their work and ministry. I'm joined by Q and Big Chris. Q and Big Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're really excited to have you guys on. You guys come from a different world than any world that we have really interviewed somebody for before. You guys come from the world of like art and comics, but you guys have, from what I've been told from Zach's conversation and meet up with you guys, St. Bear, and you guys had a chance to meet up in person. You guys have a long career of a lot of really cool stuff. So I don't care who goes first, but why don't one of you jump in and tell us a little bit about yourself and help us get to know you?
Sounds good. I'll let Chris go. His is way more exciting than mine, so I'm just gonna let him do it, and then yeah, I'll just piggyback.
And that's absolutely not true. Wait till you hear her story. So, I'm Big Chris. I started drawing pictures in kindergarten, and nobody ever told me to stop doing it. So I've just done it my whole career. I started making video games in 1992, and I did that for the better part of 30 years. I got to work on some really amazing projects over the years. Got to work on the Halo franchise, on Halo 2 and Halo 3. I got to work on Call of Duty and Left 4 Dead and 50 different fantasy and sci-fi MMOs. So video games was really my space. And then shortly after kind of leaving the video game industry, I got really heavily into merchandising and specifically even in the licensing space, and did a lot for Hot Topic and Spencer's and posters and T-shirts and all of that. When COVID hit, the whole world shut down, and malls everywhere shut down, and have really never recovered. And so I had done a little bit of work sort of here and there on some comic books throughout my career, mostly covers, or just coming in and digitally coloring a handful of episodes here and there for a variety of companies and creators. But Q and I started Corvus Comics to really house what we wanted to call kingdom content. That's what our company, Corvus Comics, that's where we live and breathe. We both grew up in church, just grew up in church and always wanted to do something kingdom related, but just never really had that opportunity throughout our careers until post-COVID. So, like you said, even in the introduction, it's a really new space that we're in right now. So.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. And so my background is feature film. So I actually started my career training exotic animals. So I trained lions and tigers and bears, and you gotta do the whole thing, right?
I love how you acted like that Chris had like the crazier story, but you literally trained bears. And so that's pretty crazy.
I sat at a desk and she got to do all the adventures.
But he used to say things like Halo and Call of Duty, and I'm like, I trained bears like with marshmallows. But yeah, so I started out with training animals, and then I just kind of got into the art side of film. So I actually worked my way up from an art intern all the way up to set decorator, prop master, then went to production designer, then I went above the line and had my own production company with a partner of mine in New Mexico, and then we kind of disbanded doing films and decided to do this. So we went merchandising and then went full into comic books. And so we've had some really exciting careers in our lives, both Chris and I, but what we started with is not where we are now, which is really interesting because we both loved it, but God had a different direction for us, and he wanted us to go just completely different way. So
yeah. Okay, let me I have questions for each of you in terms of like some of the stuff that you worked on, because I've had the privilege now, and this season specifically has been maybe the most wild, where we've gotten to talk with some people who've actually, they've created things that have been formative to a lot of people's, some of them their childhood, some of them, their college years, whatever, but certainly like we've all been sort of like involved in gaming and in nerd culture in one form or another. And so I got to interview the guys who animated Mushu and Pumbaa, which was really cool this season. And we're going to get a chance to talk with and I'm going to just draw a blank on his name, but the guy who did The Fairly Odd Parents and directed that, and which is coming up in a future episode, and that's really cool. But working on Halo and working on film, I'm like already, I'm thinking about some of the films that I've watched as a kid that had a bear in them. So what were some of the animals that you got a chance to train in some of the films that maybe they had a chance to be in?
Absolutely, absolutely. So the bears were in a lot of different, like, kind of lower budget movies and stuff. So this was in California, and so they were utilized for a lot of commercials, a lot of different movies. But one of the more, or two of the more popular movies that actually some of my animals were on was the movie Secondhand Lions.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw that one. So the lions in that were ones that I trained, worked with, and then also Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen. That one was there's a black jaguar in that is. That was also one that I trained. And so there's a lot of them, but they're used for everything. They're used for commercials. They're used for, sometimes they get rented out for events. Like, it's just, you never know what they're going to be used for, but you just work and train them and hope that they get to do some cool stuff. So.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then you got a chance to work on, you said, some prop design and things for other feature films and stuff throughout the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So in New Mexico, the film industry is pretty big there. Most people don't realize it's kind of like second Hollywood. And so so there's a lot of movies that are being filmed there. So I got to work on a lot of them. So some of them I was, the main prop master on, or the main set decorator, or production designer, sorry. Trying to think of all the words. But I got to also work on a lot of them that I wasn't the full one on. So some of the movies that I worked on there was a movie called Priceless that For King and Country did, which was one of my first movies that I was able to work on, which was a super fun project to work with them. But then I also worked on some movies that were a little bit lower budget, but they had a great cast. So one is called Sergeant Will Gardner. And it was really cool because it's actually about military veterans that when they come home, when they have trauma and that kind of thing, about the homeless problem with the veteran community. And so we got to do a lot of really neat work with that. Max Martini was the main guy in it. He also wrote and directed. He's been in tons of movies. Gary Sinise was in it. Robert Patrick was in it. We just had an all-star cast in this movie too. And so we got to do a lot of really cool things. Endless movies that I could name that we worked on, but that were just a little lower tier. I got to be on the Breaking Bad set, doing that because that was all filmed in New Mexico. Just a lot of really cool projects that I got to work on, and so yeah, it was an adventure for sure.
Yeah, heck yeah, that's really, really awesome. Okay, Chris, take me into a little bit your days doing some video game work. Art designer, I obviously, like, you've been drawing pictures. I didn't imagine you were doing a lot of like the coding or the server build out in the back end. So take me through, because I think Halo 2 is like, I have so many distinct memories of, I guess whenever, I don't know how old I was when Halo 2 came out, but Halo 1 came out sort of like high school LAN parties at a local church. And I remember and I think probably Halo 2 came out sort of at the tail end of that for me. And I just remember, like getting in, hooking up all of the Xbox. That's such an iconic moment, I think, for so many gamers, was those, 8-player, 16-player Halo, and you got a chance to sort of form or participate in building out what has been so iconic for so many people who love FPSs and games in general today. Tell me a little about working on Halo.
Yeah, so it was so awesome. I got to specifically for Halo 2, we were working on what's called the Blastacular map pack. So it was three maps. Tombstone was the most popular of those three maps. It was it's almost verbatim as far as the layout of the map, a tribute to Hang 'em High from Halo 1. Okay. So Tombstone was, I think it sold I can't even remember how many downloads it was, but it was in the millions. What I did is I was the art director, creative director on the project. So I got to help define, do a lot of concept map paintings, paint overs of the levels. One of the things that's great about the way Halo was made is they developed a system that they referred to as gray boxing. And so they would make the level fun just with gray boxes and cylinders that would later become trees or bunkers. And so they would make the game fun and fast before they made it pretty. And so what Bungie would do is they would send me screenshots of these gray box levels even prior to knowing what kind of environment it was going to be in. they would just make the levels fun, and they would send me these map paintings or these screenshots that I would then take into Photoshop and do color paint overs to set the environment, the style, the mood, the ambiance, and that was really fun. I mean, just coming in and painting, but it was also it was a little stressful. It was intimidating because Halo 1 was already such a big franchise.
Sure.
And a lot of times they would come back and I would ask, what kind of architecture is this? Is this Forerunner architecture? Is this, and they would say, oh, that's just up to you. And so I would be defining what these levels looked like. And so I played a lot of Halo 1 to just get into the vibe and get into the feel. And I think that was arguably my favorite part of working on the Halo franchise, was just the trust that they gave me just to make something cool, just make it pretty, because it's already fun to play.
That's
and
amazing.
that was a really good experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a really fun thing.
Good, kid.
I was just gonna say I have a fun thing too. So when Chris was working, I believe it was Halo 2 that Breaking Benjamin did the theme song for.
Yeah.
Okay. So our son, we love Breaking Benjamin, always have. But our 19-year-old son is maybe their biggest fan that exists on the planet. And so he and his best friend, he's leaving for college in about a week. He and his best friend drove to Dallas, Texas on Sunday to see them in concert before he leaves for college, and then drove right back. And he said even during the concert, they did the Halo, like they actually had like a run through of the Halo while they were playing the song Blow Me Away. And it was just, I was like, it's just so fun that it's just like come full circle, where it's like even the video game, the music behind it, just the whole thing has still stayed so relevant. It's just so neat.
On the big screens as the band is playing, they have the Halo heads up display. It's so neat that it's still so relevant in culture, pop culture.
I think just really cool that I think I said this on the past episode with Tom and Tony Bancroft, but I said I'm sure you wish you knew in the moment when you were creating it that you were creating something that was going to be so culturally formative for so many people, right? Everything from the music to the scenes, even, I went over to a buddy's house, now we both have kids. We put the kids to bed, went over, poured a bourbon and booted up the Xbox and put Halo in and started playing through the campaign together. And, even if it's just one night, there's so many things that are so nostalgic and just take me back to Mountain Dew Code Red and, and like endless late nights and, getting beat really bad by my younger brother and throwing the controller and all of those things get taken back to that. So super cool that you guys have gotten to work on some insane and really culturally shifting projects, and also being able to have trained a Black Panther might be the coolest thing in the entire world. It's like my favorite animal, so that's
for Aragorn.
Yeah, exactly.
You get to train a Black Panther for Aragorn.
Yeah, just so cool. Okay, but tell me a little about what you're doing today, because obviously this has got your heartbeat. Corvus is where you guys are pouring a ton of all of your time and energy into. I've gotten to take a look at a little bit. Tell me about how Corvus got started and what you guys are doing and working on today.
So Corvus got started right after, this was post-COVID, and nobody really knew what they were doing. And we had, with our merchandising that we were doing for Hot Topic, if you had gone into, any mall in the world, 40% of the wall were our designs on T-shirts and posters, and that was a great time. It was almost just kind of on cruise control. I would do a couple of designs a month. We would fly out to the big licensing shows in Vegas, and I would do live paintings, from the booth, and it was just a fun time. And so we had, when COVID hit, we had 400 plus designs that we had done, all the way from 80s horror monsters to Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz designs. I mean, just a variety of things. And so what we did is we started putting those on face masks and neck gaiters to give people, because everybody's wearing masks at this point. And so we weren't, that really took off in a really great way, but we also knew that was going to be very limited. Like this wasn't going to be forever, and we understood that. And
Sure.
And so we got an opportunity to start working with other artists and other businesses and taking their logos and putting them on our product, and got to really build a neat community within that space during that time. But we also, like I said, we knew it wasn't going to last forever. And so this was right when The Chosen launched. I think their first episode was right around that time. And I hadn't watched the episode yet, but I was watching the trailers on my phone, and I was pausing during the trailer, and to me, it just looked like a Renaissance painting. Every frame, and coming from a video game background, all of those keyframe moments are very important to me from a creative director position. And so I'm looking at these shots, and they're just so beautifully rendered, you could pause at any moment. And I'm a color theory nerd, and so just the colors and the way the lighting was and the costuming, and so I remember taking some screenshots from the trailer and taking them to Q and saying, I want to draw some of these pictures. And so honestly, we reached out to The Chosen on Instagram and said, if you haven't thought about doing a print media version of your episodes as a comic book, you'd reach an entirely different demographic. And about 15 minutes later, I got a response back asking if hey, do you know anybody? And I said, yeah. And so I took 5 days, and I think it was 5 like sleepless,
Yeah.
19, 20, 21 hour days.
Yeah.
And built a 5-page prototype spread, and it was a hit. Everybody loved it, and I remember there was a summit meeting that was happening at that time, and Dallas and Amanda Jenkins were there, and his dad Jerry Jenkins, who wrote the Left Behind series, was there as well. And Amanda picked up. We had prepared a little package for Jerry and Amanda and Dallas, and we weren't there. But the rumor is that Amanda got bored during the summit and started looking through this package and found a comic book, started flipping through it, immediately started crying, and stood up and held it up and said, hey, we're going to interrupt and talk about this right now. And it just was overwhelmingly accepted and excited. Everybody was excited about it. And so that's kind of how Corvus started, as we built Corvus Comics to house what we were doing with The Chosen IP. So
what's really cool about that specifically is we knew we wanted to do this for The Chosen because it was just such a great built-in audience already there that really was hungry for this kind of content. But what we didn't realize is how necessary it was in the faith-based space to have something that was top quality art, that was telling stories that people needed to hear, that they didn't even know that they wanted in that form, right? And so we actually did a graphic novel for The Chosen as well, and we released it at Chosen Con, their first Chosen Con. And it was the #1 seller at the entire Chosen Con. We had parents coming up to us crying and just saying, hey, we literally couldn't get our kid to read the Bible, but they will read every page of this. When is the next, edition coming out? Like, how do we get our kids this stuff? So whether it was people who just like comic books, or whether it was people who had some form of a disability that were just like, hey, this really reaches us. It was just such a cool, eye-opening thing. And so we're like, we've got to do this on a bigger scale. We've got to go outside of the IP of The Chosen and just start really getting content before people so that they can digest it really well.
Yeah. And so it started with The Chosen, but you're doing a lot more than that now, because I think I talked to Zach a little bit. You guys are doing some stuff with Dallas Theological, I think, and a couple of others, right? So what's the scope today? I mean, it's 5 years in, right? Post COVID. What's the scope of what you're working on now in this space?
Yeah, so what's really interesting about, we are working with Dallas Theological Seminary. They have an initiative called Story of Scripture, and it's something where the president of Dallas Theological Seminary is going a couple times a year. He goes to events and does this teaching, and it's basically walking through Genesis to Revelation in a weekend, kind of some main points, walking through it and kind of finding the connective thread between the entirety of the Bible. And so what's really neat about it is they brought us on to do comic books to kind of complement. So right now we're walking through the Bible is basically what we're doing. What's really cool about it is we started with Abraham because we wanted it to kind of be a dynamic first series to go through. So it's a 5-book series, and it's I think told in about 170 some odd pages for the story of Abraham, because it's 5 total comic books, and it's the most in-depth dive you can get into the Abraham story, because we have theologians that help us write it, and then we have theologians that are checking it on the back end. And so we've got historical references, we've got kind of everything you could want. But what was really important to us was making sure that everything is so checked, that everything is theologically accurate, that we're not feeding information that isn't right or isn't going the right direction. And so to tell the Abraham story, like, we've been in church our whole lives. We when we were writing this and doing the artwork, we discovered stuff we had never known before about the Abrahamic covenant and about the Abraham story, even though we've read those things 100 times. And so we kind of get to dive into it. It also helps with visuals, right? Like, because visuals really do help sell what you're reading. And so for us, we're getting to kind of do this really cool, intense, deep dive into the Bible and let people just experience through a whole new visual way of doing it. We have some of the top tier artists literally in the industry. And what's been really cool about that is we would find these artists and we're like, okay, we're going to reach out to them. There's absolutely no way they're going to want to work on a faith-based project, but we're going to try. And I'm not kidding. You would be shocked to hear how many people are like, thank you. We have been having to draw horrible things we haven't wanted to do. And, we don't want to work on the stuff that's in the mainstream comic book industry because we are believers. But that's the only thing that's available. And so we have a team of people that are, I'm not kidding, I think they rival anybody in the industry. And so the art is just top tier, but they're loving being on a faith-based project. So we're getting some really cool, really cool stuff that God's just opening doors, being like, yeah, this is needed. This is necessary. And we just didn't know it until we started.
Well, okay, that brings up a whole different series of questions for me. And I love what you guys are doing. And I haven't, I'm a comic book reader, but I haven't been a comic book reader in quite a while, right? I have my long boxes stuffed full of DC and stuff upstairs somewhere in Image Comics and yada yada, but I haven't been for a while. I need to get back to it and also pick up some, because I have kids, would love to pour through some of this stuff with them. And I've always wanted to get my girls into comic books. But help me understand this and the interaction that you guys have had then with the church world, because obviously, you guys have no problem. You walk in both of these worlds, right? You're believers, follow Jesus, but also artists, designers, creators. But I had a pretty open-minded Christian mother who didn't want me going into our local comic book shop because she thought that there was too many things that were demonic in it. And I don't think I was allowed in a Hot Topic in the mall, certainly not a Spencer's, until, I was a lot older. My first time in Hot Topics was buying my first lip rings, right? Which wasn't my mother's favorite thing either. And so, you guys are tatted up. You certainly have a super cool look, but probably not the look that fits into what most people conventionally look to. So I would imagine your journey between what you're doing professionally and then also the church has had seasons of challenge in it.
That's an understatement.
That's fair. That's a fair statement. So we're kind of funny anyway. I'm 6'7", close to 300 pounds, and Q's 5'2" and 100 pounds soaking wet, and so we're kind of funny. We're a funny couple anyway. But you add kind of our aesthetic. It certainly has come with some challenges. However, what we found, especially when we were in the licensing space, we would be able to sit with Marilyn Manson or Snoop Dogg, and we would be able to sit with these guys. We could sit at a lot of tables that a lot of Christians couldn't sit at. We were welcomed there because, in a lot of ways, because of the way we look. We met one of our really great friends is Art Cruz. He's the drummer for Lamb of God. And he would, when they'd come through tour with Slayer or Megadeth, he would call us up and we would come down and get backstage, and we were nobody ever looked at us as being, out of place. Now, when we would walk into a church lobby, looking for a new church,
that would be a different story, right?
We would get those looks, and so my favorite part of it, I fell in love with my Bible in the 7th grade, and I joined a national Bible quiz tournament. It was this great epic thing. And I got really serious about Bible quiz from 7th grade to my senior year of high school. I memorized 13 books in the New Testament from beginning to end, and just would go on these, travel the nation and in these quiz competitions. Loved it. I still miss it sometimes. I think about it. I played a lot of football as well, so between football and Bible quiz, I just miss the competitive space. But being able to, I guess my favorite part of our aesthetic is that we do get a second chance to make a first impression. I think when people meet us for the first time, they see us and they have a judgment based on the way we look. And then they talk to us for 10 or 15 minutes and really get to know us. So a lot of times people think that I'm kind of scary, but the second I open my mouth, people know that I'm a giant teddy bear. So so that's just a fun part of our world.
And we have hit a lot of roadblocks because of our aesthetic and because of kind of who we are. But the reality is, God creates everybody to be unique. And this is something my grandma always said this term, and it's so funny. It's like the oldest lady term you can say, right? But she would be like, if everybody wore brown shoes, it would be boring, right? That was kind of her term to say everybody has their unique place. And what Chris and I have found is we get to witness to people on such a different scale than a lot of people could. My brother is he's a pastor for 18 years. I was brought up Southern Baptist. He's working on his doctorate right now in applied apologetics. Like, if you saw us standing next to each other, you would not have a clue we were related in any way, right? But he gets to reach a specific, demographic or, people. And then we have a very different ministry. So we do get to go into the highways and the hedges, and we do get to kind of sit with people that most Christians probably wouldn't feel comfortable sitting with. But we get to be that light for them. And that's what's really neat about kind of our company even is comic books don't really fit into the Christian space very well. I mean, they just don't, based on what's
We've had some pretty
there.
Poorly made ones in the Christian space that are sort of like they're the Christian copies of pop culture, right? Let's just, in whatever form that takes, Christians have historically not done a great job of leaning into doing media or entertainment very well.
Exactly. And, it goes back, like I love ancient history. That's kind of, I nerd out on it, especially like European stuff.
So it goes way back.
Way back. And we've talked a lot about this within our company, that it's really sad because if you look back through history, and you look at temples and you look at cathedrals and you look at the art that was produced for the religious art and the different things, like, it was top tier. It was every ounce of strength and every ounce of talent went into creating that because it was worthy of being created in a beautiful space. I think we have fallen so far from that in a lot of ways, where the Christian stuff, we kind of joke, a lot of it is, we call it bronze medal at best, right? Like, they're trying, and there's a lot there, but it's not necessarily meeting the standards of what it should be meeting because the secular market is just running that over. And we just don't want that to be the case anymore. We really want to bring in everybody's top tier gifts and be like, look, God, this is what we're offering to you, and we want it to be the best. We want it to be able to reach people who might not pick up a book that isn't very great, or that if they're looking at like our comic book next to a secular comic book, that they'll pick it up because of the art, and then they'll read it and actually digest the information and then want the next edition. And so yeah, we feel exactly the same. It's a strange world right now.
Yeah, to Q's point, the church led the way. I mean, they set the standard and the bar in the arts.
For
the church doesn't
many years.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, the church is the only reason it survived, really. I mean, it was the last beacon of culture and art that remained in the world for a certain portion of history. Well, one of the reasons that I asked that, I got to, once again, I'm thinking about my episode with Tom and Tony because it was one of the most recent ones, and they had said, they really received some backlash from the Christian world and the church for working for Disney during the season that they did. And that was, that was the early 2000s when they were creating some of the things that they were creating. And they would get a lot of back, like, how could you work for that sort of like that evil company, Disney? And in the same way, there are a lot of people in our space who listen to this who get the similar backlash, maybe in smaller ways, right? And so even this last weekend, I personally went up and preached at a couple of small churches in rural Western Pennsylvania, just doing some pulpit filling for a pastor who needed a break. And I got up there, and one of the ladies who's leading, part of the service for these 30 or 40 people, she asked me what I do, and I told her. And she says, "Oh, my daughter is a gamer." And I've just, I guess I've always thought that gaming was the problem. Like, that was the devil. I don't like the way that she talks when she's gaming. And maybe her daughter doesn't talk well when she's gaming. I'm not sure. But the point is, there is this overarching opinion that, like, hey, the thing that you're doing is probably not a Christian-like thing to do, right? And that opinion can really hurt people's ability to sort of lean into not only the things that they love, but the places that God has made them passionate. And what I love is what you guys have done is taken, like, hey, God has not only gifted us with this, but he's also made us incredibly passionate about it. And you have merged, like, your love of history, your love of scripture, your love of theology, your skill and love for art, and not just art, but like really high quality, really well done, really professional. And then you've pulled in a bunch of other people who also share in those things, and like, hey, let's take the things that we love and let's bring them together in a beautiful way. And I love that. And I think it's a great testament for anyone who's listening to the show of, what is possible. And the fact that they're like, I think some people feel very isolated and very alone. So it's cool to hear that there's more people in the comic book space that are believers. Oh, yeah. Who are looking for projects like what you guys are working on at Corvus. So tell me the moment that it really, I mean, obviously you told me a little bit about like, hey, I just wrote something for The Chosen and like God opened that door. But, God was closing the door in merchandise. That's pretty clear. But I'm sure there's a tremendous number of avenues and places that you could go. What do you feel like was like the voice of God in your lives when it was like, hey, don't just put this out there, but like, we're going to launch a company and this is going to become what we're about. Like, we're going to walk away from the things that we previously did and we're going to go do this new thing together. And I'm sure Corvus is more than just the two of you, because the amount of projects that you guys are putting out now sounds like it's a lot more people working both for you guys and with you guys to be able to pull that together over the last couple of years. So tell me a little bit about the discernment process for you guys. Was it like an aha moment, like a Holy Spirit moment for you guys that was just like, okay, God is definitely in this, and this is where he's directing us?
Yeah, I would say my moment was prior to starting Corvus. In 2004, I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I lived 8 months in the hospital doing triple dose chemotherapy. And so I had a lot of time. I lived in a clean room in the hospital, and so I had a lot of time to think, and I had been working in video games for years and years and years at this point, and I just knew that I wanted to do something that was going to make a lasting impact. And as cool as Halo was, and as long as it's lasted, I wanted to do something that was going to make an eternal impact. And so for me, it was really those moments that said, okay, I've got to really position myself in such a way that I can start doing kingdom work. And
I think the confirmation came when we sent the email or the Instagram message to The Chosen. The lady who ran the Instagram page at the time has now become a really close friend of ours, but she said that literally they receive, even early on, they were receiving thousands of messages every single day. And she said, we literally never open, any of them, or very few of them, just because they can't. There's no way to sift through that. And she said, for whatever reason, she said, every day I would pray, if there's something that I need to open, God lead me to that message. And she just happened to click on ours. And it was one of those situations where it was like, those things don't just happen, right? I mean, that is an orchestration behind the scenes where God's like, this needs to happen. This is important.
And Mackenzie, if you're watching, we love you.
We love Mackenzie. But the other cool thing is too, when we started the comic book stuff, it was about a $3.8 billion industry annually. It has now grown to $15.3 billion annually for comic books.
Just in the last 5 years.
Yeah, well, in the last 3 years, really, because that's when we did these the last statistics. So in the last 3 years, it's grown that substantially, and it has flipped to 53% female readership. It blew our minds. Like we were
for the first time in comic book history, it's now 50
more female than male. Oh, that's really interesting. Do you have any idea? People have an idea about why that is? Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really curious. Do you think it's the spillover? Like, obviously, like anime and manga has a more intentionally female bent to it, and do you think the success of that has caused comic book creators to say, "Hey, there's a female audience out here. If we can tailor our comic books to reach that audience"?
I think so. I think that's definitely a huge part of it. I think the other part of it is Comic-Cons and cosplay.
Oh, yeah.
Women love to do their cosplay and go to the Comic-Cons and dress up. And not saying that it's specifically to women. I mean, there's tons of men that do it too, and it's like it's a whole thing. But I think it's the combination of those where women feel very connected now to what comic books are, or to the feelings maybe that are portrayed through them or through the writing. You know, we don't fully know 100% why. But the fact that it is now flipped to female, it's like, okay, things are changing in the comic book space where we've got to reassess the direction that we are going with things to make sure that we're making sure we can reach the people who are reading, right? And who want this content. So it's been really neat. I mean, just seeing that growth and knowing that this is the time, you know, I mean, Esther, in Esther, it talks about for such a time as this, and it feels like this is that time that we need to be getting this content out there because people are wanting it and they're craving it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask this, and then we'll ask the last question. What is the thing that you're allowed to talk about, the project that you're allowed to talk about that you're most excited about right now? I don't know if you guys have like secret projects that you don't want to chat about, but if there's one that you're allowed to talk about that you're most excited about, what are you most excited about with Corvus right now?
So I've got a couple, and I can maybe give some hints because we're still in the process of reaching out and establishing. But we've been really intentional, especially on our Instagram pages, to connect not only with the IPs themselves, but also directly with the actors. So we're doing a lot with the actors from The Chosen right now, and that's spilling over into our comic book. So at the back of every comic book, we have a letter written by an author or an actor, a professor, and it's a practical application. It's part practical application, part devotional, and just life content. And so a reader will read the story, but then they have this application that they can take and now even understand a little bit better what they read. And most recently, we've had two actors from The Chosen, Elijah Alexander, who plays Atticus, and Lotta Silva, who plays Eden, Simon Peter's wife. And Eden, Lotta wrote the letter at the back of our first Moses book. So we've just started our Moses saga. Okay. And that's been really fun to interact. What we're doing on social media right now, both with The Chosen and the actors from the House of David, and that's my little sneak peek from the TV show House of David from Prime, Amazon Prime, is in the spirit of the Ice Bucket Challenge. I'll do an illustration of one of the actors, one of their characters, and we work with them, and they send us their favorite image of their character. We'll draw that, and then they will challenge the next actor. They'll post on their own social media. They'll tag the next actor in line, who will then be illustrated by us. That's and cool. Both with The Chosen and the House of David, that's just been really fun and really successful. And so the integration now with not only with the IP itself, but also with the creators, that's my favorite part of the process is getting to know these people. And here I'm a little bit of a story junkie, I'm sure, much like you are. And getting to know these actors in that way has been so fun. It's been so rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of projects we're working on. We have a lot of projects that we're kind of in early development on. So right now we're doing, mostly biblical stuff that's very just straight out of the Bible content. But we do kind of in the same way The Chosen has to add some things here and there. We'll pull it together to make sure the story is cohesive, but it is run through theological people, historians, everybody, to make sure it's nothing that would detract from the actual theological meaning of the scripture. But then we have another book that we're working with a church out of California, and it's called Jaywalkers. And it's beautiful. Like it's about this lady who went and prayer walked around schools, and she started this club at the school because these kids just saw her praying. And now there's this huge club movement in Anaheim, California with a cap of 70 kids that are there every week just wanting Jesus. And there's
And they had to cap it at 70 because 200 kids were showing up.
Yeah, at this middle school. Yeah. And she's doing it at a bunch of different schools around, but she wanted a comic book. So we've created a comic book series that's going to be probably a 13 book run. And what we decided to do with it was to help kids understand that they're not alone, because it's dealing with the main issues that kids are dealing with right now in life. So, one of them is worthlessness is the first one. The other one is, addiction, or, maybe it's them, maybe it's a family member, that kind of thing, or self-worth or self-identity, different things like that, where each book is dealing with that. And it's almost like a Stranger Things kind of feel, like you actually get to see the spiritual world. So it's like a vertical slice where you see all the real world, and then you see the world behind the world is what we call it.
Yeah.
And it's super cool. Like we're trying to reach people where they're at in different demographics. We also have a children's book line that we're doing. So we have a children's book illustrator that is amazing. And so they're called Jot and Tittle, and it's a pig and donkey. Here, I'll show you really quick just so you can see how cute they are. But
very cute.
Yep, and they walk through the Bible, and so it's literally they're observers of the Bible, and so they're going to observe all of the Bible stories that we can kind of make work in that space. We have tons of content that's on the horizon, and we're just constantly working.
That's awesome. Well, okay, I try to close down every episode with a question like this. If we were to go back, pre-COVID, let's go the whole way back. We're training bears and working on Halo, right? Like if we were to track back really far and you were to look at, take the wisdom that you've gained today, seeing how God has worked to develop your skills and cut your teeth in various industries along the way, whether that was in prop design and artwork for feature films, or this is in video game design and artwork inside of there, and has really prepared you guys for something unique, right? Like not only did he give you guys a passion that was baked into you for scripture and for history, and now you're bringing that passion even from childhood to bear inside of something that throughout your entire professional life God has sharpened you with. What would you say to that person that's starting out, that big Chris, that Q that's starting out, that like something that you would note today that you would want to give to them back then? It's a hard question.
You go.
I would start with just reminding myself to trust the process. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. You're going to go through things. You're going to have great successes. You're going to have things that doors close and you didn't understand why. Just continue to do what you're doing. Hone your craft. Trust the process. The Bible's really clear. My favorite verse is John 16:33. Where Jesus says, "In this world you will have trouble. Be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And then even coming into James, where the first chapter of James, where it's talking about that you're going to deal with trials and temptations. You're going to deal with things, but if you're patient, if you let patience have its perfect work, you'll be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. And so just trust that process. Trust that even through the hard times, things are going to be okay. Whether it's an illness or an opportunity that closed the doors and you didn't understand why. Because I really feel like we've settled into the early stages. You're catching us at the very early stages of this next chapter and this next adventure that God has asked us to pursue. And so just stay the course, trust the process, enjoy the journey.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think the thing that I would say is, as long as you're founded in your faith and you're following Christ, be who he created you to be. I think that's the biggest thing that hurdles that I hit along the way, is people wanted me to conform to an ideal that wasn't who God had created me to be. As long as you're following him and you're founded in your faith, he has you as a unique creature. You know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to be a cookie cutter of somebody else. And in that you have a worth and you have a talent and something that you get to offer to the world that no one else can offer. And so I think that's what I would recommend, is just follow Christ and follow him, in being yourself and who he created you to be.
I love that. That's such solid advice. And I think, for so many people, that pressure to conform, or that feeling of up and down, and that feeling of like something didn't go well for me. I didn't have as many people in my stream. This YouTube video didn't do as well as the last one did. And maybe there's such a temptation to just throw in the towel and not just keep your eyes fixed on what God has called you to, but get so fixed on the results of what your hands are doing. Trust that God is preparing you for whatever it is that he's going to open the door to next. And I'm sure, Chris and Q, that he's going to open the door to some really incredible stuff for you guys and for Corvus. If someone wanted to check out Corvus and check out some of the work and the comics and stuff that you guys are putting out, where would they check you out?
I would just say corvuscomics.com. You can also follow us on our social medias, primarily Instagram at Corvus Comics or at Big Chris Corvus. That's where we're putting a lot of our sketches and things like that as well. So
we've got tons of video content. So like Chris was talking about those drawings he's been doing, there's so many reels up there. We have an amazing videographer that does the coolest videos. So you guys definitely should go check him out on Instagram and YouTube for sure. So.
Awesome. And we're going to be in your neck of the woods. Are we going to get to hopefully see you in person maybe in April for Nerd Culture Ministry Summit?
Absolutely, and we would love to help in any way we can. You guys just let us know, and we'll be there. So.
Awesome. Well, hopefully you guys are able to come and join us. If you're listening to this episode, guys, Nerd Culture Ministry Summit's registration is already open. And if you register in September or October, not only do you get your ticket and be able to secure your room at the castle grounds, provided by the time we're here that the castle hasn't sold out. I don't think it should have by the time this episode comes out. But if it has, I'm sorry, I just told you to get your room. Grab a hotel room instead. But we have a really amazing event coming up in April 14th to the 16th. It's going to be an incredible gathering of people who are all over this space and all sorts of creative endeavors. So come and hang out with us live in person there. Colorado Springs, Colorado, inside of Garden of the Gods at the Navigator's Castle, Glen Erie Castle, April 14th to the 16th. If you register between September or October of 2025, you also get entered to win tabletop game giveaway from Emberglow Gaming. It comes with a couple of sets of dice, some awesome sort of like swag and some blinged out stuff that you can take to your next tabletop gaming day. I know I want to win it, although I can't win it because I'm not allowed to enter to win it, but you can enter to win it. So go register for Nerd Culture Ministry Summit 2026 today. The link will be in the description of this episode, along with links to Corvus Comics and Q and Big Chris's Instagram account, so you can go and check them out as well and see what they're putting out. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of NCMU Podcast. And Q and Chris, thank you guys for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
And I'll ask my boss if I can get time off to come to that event. So
okay,
we'll make it happen.
Okay, great. Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see you there. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you in the next one.